The biggest highlight for me, though, so far is Daniel Ings, I think that's how you say his name, as Sir Lionel Baratheon, who is, one of the ancestors of, Bobby B, chat, Robert Baratheon from the original Game of Thrones show. I love the Baratheons. I love Bobby B. I'm just laughing, always enjoying himself. And when we immediately, first meet him, he is just injecting scenes with so much, I guess I would describe it as, rough charisma and a lot of, theatrical bravado that feels so perfectly suited to a Baratheon and suited, to this era. And his interactions are especially effective, especially when he's, meeting with, Sir Duncan. So, I recently just started watching A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, the latest Game of Thrones spin-off show. But before getting into nitty-gritty details of this new series, is it good, is it bad, is it somewhere in between? You'll find out in just a bit, or at least my opinion on it so far. I do want to briefly talk about my thoughts on Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, of course. Like a lot of people, I watched the original Game of Thrones show and quickly fell in love with it. Love seasons 1 through 4 especially. Seasons 3 for 4, I mean, that's some of the best modern television, right, of the 2010s. Just really awesome and special, fantastic performances, great writing, great spectacle. I mean, moments that I think just took our breath away. I mean, everyone knows the Red Wedding. It was huge. That was like a cultural entertainment event. As horrifying as it was very entertaining. And then season 4, basically exploring the aftermath of all that, was great. And then we got season 5, which I would say is probably at that point, that was this is the weakest season. Not to say that everything was bad about it, but it was it just doesn't feel as strong as those 4 seasons. And that's when, Benioff and Weiss were kind of running out of material to adapt. And you felt that. We all felt that. And then season 6 kind of came back, and it was much better, giving us stuff like, Battle of the Bastards and Destruction of the Sept. I was like, oh, wow, this is really cool. And then we got season 7 and 8, and that's when it really started to fall apart again. And certainly with season 8. That last season, where it just felt like Benioff and Weiss were just rushing just to get it over with, even though it's I feel like you can just continue to explore this world and these characters and these stories over time. Just felt like we're just cutting all this out. Let's just get to the end. It was a mess, and then of course we found out that they did indeed speed towards the end and weren't listening to even HBO because they already built up all that clout, or George R. R. Martin, who, both HBO and George R. R. Martin, they wanted it to be 10 seasons, 10 episodes. But Benioff and Weiss is we got all these deals, we got all these other shows you want to make, we got a Star Wars deal of Disney, who cares? And it's well, maybe since you don't care anymore, maybe you should just hand it off to your understudies. That's what you're supposed to do. But it became one of the, honestly, one of the most controversial finales in TV history honestly, it's probably one of the worst finales in TV history. And really, really hurt the Game of Thrones, Song of Ice and Fire brand. It just, in terms of pop culture, it just kind of jumped off a cliff. people weren't talking about it as passionately as they once were, And every time they did bring up, it was always in regards to how piss poor that last season was and how piss poor that final episode was, right? It was very frustrating, very sad. And so it was announced that they were going to do House of the Dragon. I think we're all prequel series, even though it's exploring a really interesting aspect of Westeros history, the Targaryen Civil War, which I knew about. I was oh, this is, it's cool material, but I'm just I don't know if I want to get invested in all that. But that first season, chat, it slapped. It was fantastic. It was so goddamn good. It made everyone excited again for Game of Thrones. Made us go wow, no, there's still so much you can do in this world, and you have people that care. And then we got that second season. I feel like the first half of that season was pretty strong, right? Those first 4 episodes, but man, those last 4, it just felt like we were kind of spinning our wheels. I think undercutting, essentially eliminating 2 episodes, from that season was a huge mistake because all the cost cutting that David Zumbafu, David Zaslav, we want to call him, chat, the moron that runs Warner Brothers. He made that choice and forced it on them, and you could tell it just felt wait, what happened? And that's why I'm a little concerned about season 3 now. We're just going to keep getting that. But it just felt like they didn't know what to do with certain characters, or they had written them in such a place where it's why are we not spending more time with Matt Smith's, a Targaryen prince who was such a standout? Why are we just having him trip fucking balls for that entire season? It was just so weird. They made a lot of weird decisions. It was too bad because the first season was so great. Any case. Going into this show, going into Knights of the Seven Kingdom, which is the third television series in George R. R. Martin's Son of Ice and Fire franchise. It's essentially like an adaptation of the short stories, the Tales of Sir Duncan and Egg, Tales of Duncan Egg, which were the series of novels, beginning, I think, like with the Hedge Knight novella. And it follows Sir Duncan the Tall, who is the titular Hedge Knight, and his squire Egg, who go off on all these tourneys and all these adventures, with each other. Like, apparently these books, they're very short, they're very sweet, kind of like tall tales, beloved tall tales, like even within the world of Game of Thrones. You've kind of heard these characters mentioned, like in both, well, I guess not the House of the Dragon, but certainly the original Game of Thrones series, and of course referenced in the books and things. And like going into it, like, I guess I wasn't like super excited, but I want to give it a chance because there are a lot of things from Game of Thrones and House of Dragon that I do enjoy, despite my frustration, despite our frustrations. And after this first episode, Night of the Seven Kingdoms, it feels like a safe return to the world of Westeros. One that consciously kind of steps away from a lot of the dire stakes of Game of Thrones in favor of something that I think is like smaller, warmer, and definitely more intimate, and I think for the most part, the shift, it mostly works thanks to clearly a clear affection for Martin's Duncan Egg stories and those characters, and a production that looks and feels authentically lived in, as we saw with House of the Dragon and certainly Game of Thrones. Like, the armor's all battered, the inns are all smoky, of course, the roads are muddy and filled with feces, and the world still feels grounded in a way that recalls the early Thrones rather than like, the latter excesses, like in the weaker latter seasons of Game of Thrones and the back half of season 2 of House of the Dragon. It's a shockingly like quiet show so far without being really super ostentatious. And it is confident, I guess, in itself, at least enough to let the more quiet conversations and quiet moments, matter most of the time. And Peter Claffey, who I'm unfamiliar with as an actor, he's very well cast as Sir Duncan the Tall. This Hedge Knight who's, former, like the knight that he served dies. And now he's just trying to make his way in this world, trying to figure out, like, what's the next thing I'm going to do in my life? Because he doesn't know. He's unsure of himself. And I feel like he does a great job of capturing, Dunk's, physical presence. He's very, very tall, obviously, hence the name, Sir Duncan the Tall. And also his moral decency. And without, like, him turning into, like, a bland, paragon-type character. There's also, this really appealing awkwardness to him, to his honor. And a sense that he's just constantly figuring out how to be a knight, and also trying to live by the chivalry, which so many knights in Westeros could give a shit less about. Like, it's nice to follow that kind of guy who's trying to be the best person that he possibly can. I think that's very good. And there's actually a lot of funny moments where he constantly like cuts back to his his memories of the night that he served Sir Arlen of Pennytree, and like all those good moments and that he had, even though most of them are kind of pretty horrific and terrible. And he has like this, I don't know, this rose-tinted idea. He always has like these rose-tinted glasses on when he thinks about his old master, and how honestly how kind of shitty he was to him the whole time. But he's just such a good person. He doesn't want to remember his master in that way. And that's like some of the better comedic moments in this episode, is those quick little flashbacks, because there's a lot of comedy in this series, at least in this first episode. And I want to touch more on that in just a bit, because I feel like I'm a little mixed on that. But then you also have Dexter Sol Ansel, say that 10 times fast, who I think is also, at least so far what we've seen of him, is pretty strong as the character of Egg, who's actually a really important character in the history of Game of Thrones and The Son of Ice and Fire. If you know, you know. He brings like a really like sharp intelligence to him, and kind of has this barely contained impatience, which I found very, very funny. And the chemistry that he has with Claffy, with Duncan, it's so obvious. It's instantaneous, at least so far. Like that, even though they're not on screen together a lot in the episode, because it's mostly focusing on Duncan, him going like, what the fuck am I going to do next? When they do share screen time in this episode, and I imagine in episodes that follow will be even more so, it's pretty good. You like their dynamic. The biggest highlight for me, though, so far is Daniel Ings, I think that's how you say his name, as Sir Lionel Baratheon, who is, one of the ancestors of, Bobby Beach at, Robert Baratheon from the original Game of Thrones show. I love the Baratheons. I love Bobby B. I'm just laughing, always enjoying himself. And when we immediately, first meet him, he is just injecting scenes with so much, I guess I would describe it as, rough charisma and a lot of, theatrical bravado that feels so perfectly suited to a Baratheon and suited, to this era. And his interactions are especially effective, especially when he's, meeting with, Sir Duncan. Great scenes of them blending so much humor and tension and just a sense of unpredictable authority. It's I loved this character. He was just so much fun. He feels more like a classic Game of Thrones character he's morally complicated. When you first meet him, he's he's kind of an idiot. But then later on, he's he's not only he's an idiot, but he's kind of terrifying and intimidating, and he's threatening to kill all these, kill a certain character. And then he'll just be fucking wild and really goofy and funny. And he loves to dance. He's a big dancer. And those moments are great. He's a big partier. But then he'll have these really introspective moments where it's oh no, he's not stupid. He actually is really intelligent. And beneath all that, maybe there is a good person there. And again, that's what I think we all love about Game of Thrones, or when it's at its best, is we're being introduced to these very morally great characters, and we kind of go back and forth on them, how we feel about them. We can either love them in one moment or despise them in another moment, and always kind of feel mixed on them. I mean, the performance is great overall, but it's just where do we sit with them? And his character just feels like that classic Game of Thrones character that we enjoy watching, because we kind of know what they're going to do, but we get to know them more and more over time. And I think just these scenes remind you overall, how good Game of Thrones or, A Song of Ice and Fire adaptations can be. When they focus on the personalities, spend time with these characters, consistently having us and other people, within the episodes themselves, obviously, constantly engaging with them. The performances, at least so far across the board, feel very well done, well calibrated, to the material. It's never straining for modern irony or even, grim, dark severity, where it feels almost like a parody of itself. That said, though, the show's softer edge is also where I think it occasionally falters in smoothing out the harsher corners of this world, of Westeros. I think it sometimes loses the bite that made the earlier entries in the franchise so compelling. The humor in particular is uneven in this first episode. When it's rooted in character, it lands. When you got, Lionel Baratheon doing his thing, it's oh, this is actually really working. I'm engaged. But there are just moments where the jokes feel very overly broad or oddly timed and undercutting tension rather than relieving it. The first 5 minutes, you have a shit joke that just comes out of nowhere. It was why did that happen? It just felt well, this isn't it almost feels like you have this moment with this character who is saying all these things and being yes, and now I've got to go on this journey. I have to fulfill my destiny, my destiny or whatever. And then it literally has them going, and just massive liquid diarrhea everywhere. It's just okay. But when it happens, I don't know, there's no lead up to it. And it just didn't feel natural. It's just what if we have this scene where it's a fucking shit joke? It's going to be funny. I'm I didn't really find it all that funny. Although, again, humor is the most subjective of genres. What I may not find funny, you may find hilarious. You may love the stream of liquid feces coming out of that character's butt cheeks. It was yes. But for me, it was just that's kind of weird. Also, the episode length, really short. it was like 40 minutes. I think it's like 40 minutes with the credits there, right? And I don't know, it just kind of ended when I was like really settling into it. It just kind of ends. And apparently the following episodes are going to be like 25 to 30 minutes long. I don't know, which is kind of crazy to me. And I had, as you guys know, I had such an issue with House of the Dragon season 2, where they literally eliminated 2 episodes and had it down to 8, and I feel like that really hurt the pacing of the show and what we were kind of leading to. And now we gotta wait like 3 years, for the next season and finally get that catharsis. But it's just like, God damn it. So yeah, that's a little frustrating. And I understand that this is based on shorter material. It's based on novellas. It's not based on like, tomes like House of the Dragon or Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire. But I don't know. I wish it was longer because I was enjoying these characters. It's like, so far I think the series is pleasant enough, even charming, but it does feel a little too safe. It's hesitant, I think, just to fully embrace the cruelty, and I think a lot of the moral ambiguity that has defined this world for so long. But I don't know, even with those reservations, it's certainly a well-acted adaptation so far. I have no issues with any of the performances, and I'm definitely going to keep watching it for right now. But it definitely doesn't have the same impact of the first episode of Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon, which, I can see letting a lot of people down. Not bad, but I expected a little bit more. I'm going to stick with it. I'll probably return and do a full season 1 review. It's also I think it's only like 5 or 6 episodes. So it's like, oh, all right. I'll get back to do a full review in like a month and a half. But yeah, a solid start, but not one that is as impactful as those previous 2 shows. What about you guys? I'm curious. How many of you have started watching this? I think a lot of people didn't even know this was coming out. There hasn't been a lot of marketing for this at all. Reminiscent of several other like big things that have come out recently. Did you like it? Were you more mixed on? Did you downright hate it? You're just like, no, thank you, Game of Thrones, I'm done. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, I'll have a dragon burn you to death. Let me know.
5 minutes later.
Get over to Make Stars. I know that's the crazy thing with like Benioff and Weiss, where they literally, and that whole thing just that collapsed because of how awful the Game of Thrones season and finale was received. Which is like, deserved, and that they deserve to lose it. They 100% deserve to lose it. But it's just like, man, that's why I just have no interest in whatever they do now. Like, if I'm ever going to actually invest myself in anything Benioff and Weiss do in the future, I'm like, I want to make sure the whole thing is out there beforehand, and to know what kind of like the general consensus and like everyone's saying. Because I'm like, I'm not going to fucking invest, years of my fucking life watching this thing for them just to give up and them going, whatever, I don't really care anymore. We got a new deal for whatever this other thing, this new sparkly thing that has caught their attention and is hurting the quality of the thing they're working on now. And so I know they're adapting a book series. I forget the name of it. I think they had like the first season on Netflix or whatever, and people are saying it's pretty good, but then apparently there's been delays. So I'm like, I'm not getting invested. I'm not gonna watch that until it's done. People say it's pretty good, but I don't trust them at all. I don't think anyone should trust them. They betrayed a lot of people's trust, and I think they'll pay for it for the rest of their lives creatively. Oh, let's see here. I might get into it at some point. Definitely genuinely traumatized. But it did. People were pissed off. I mean, I get it. I was pissed off. I was like, that was it? Like Il Chiroi of season 8, not going back. Yeah. I get it, Jay. I mean, fine. I am probably not going to invest time in another Game of Thrones property, says Bishop. This is why I'm waiting for that 3-Body Problem show. Oh, yeah, that's it. Yeah, there's the finish before pointer. Yeah, exactly. Let me be fair, I've never finished the original Game of Thrones series. There you go. Yeah, we'll see, chap. But I wanted to give this a shot because I was mildly interested, and I'm I was mildly entertained. I'm hoping the rest of the series is, and I hope it ends strong. I don't even know how many seasons this is. I don't know if this is going to be it. Is this like this one season, or they're going to do 2 or 3? I have no clue. But I guess I can look it up. I do have the Wikipedia page open. Let's see here. Series premiere consists of 6 episodes. Head of the first season premiere, the series was renewed for a second season, which is expected to release 2027. Okay, so it is getting a second season. So we'll see about that. We'll see how that works out. Oh, did you guys also hear about how George R. R. Martin said his relationship with the showrunner for House of the Dragon is completely broken down? And how, like, the two of them despise one another. Have you guys read about that? That's really interesting to me. I was like, oh, that's a good sign. And apparently he said, like, it was great, like, in for the first season, but then maybe that explains it, because in the second season it was such a fucking mess. And he says, like, yeah, all the problems started to pick up in the second season. I was like, yeah. Yeah, I did. I believe the word he used was abysmal. Yeah. I was like, damn. Yeah, let me read it. I have it. It's so funny. Like, I have all the just looking up things that George R. R. Martin has said recently, and even George R. R. Martin was surprised by that poop scene. It's like it comes out of fucking nowhere. The poop scene in this shit. It was like, what the fuck? Like, why did you do that? Very, very weird. Very, very weird. What was the guy? Who was the guy that he fucking hates? Richard. What's the guy's name? George R. R. Martin. House of the Dragon. I'll just type that in. I mean, like, make it easier on myself. Oh, here we go. This is from the playlist. This is interesting. I'll share my screen with you guys on this one. Yeah. This was 2 days ago. House of the Dragon, George R. R. Martin says, relationship with showrunner Ryan Condal was abysmal ahead of season 3. That's good. That's definitely what you want to hear before we watch for season 3. Want to hear some terrible PR for the upcoming third season HBO's Game of Thrones spinoff, House of the Dragon's co-creator George R. R. Martin never wants to mince words. That's true. His relationship with showrunner Ryan Condal was abysmal. Like a bit of real-world smoke rises just as the series is supposed to be stoking the next round of Targaryen Dragonfire. Asked how things got rocky between the two. Martin didn't bother with euphemisms. Worse than Rockies. It's abysmal. He also framed the deterioration as a shift from early partnership that, in his telling, actually functioned at least during season 1. I hired Ryan. That's so mad. Martin said, I thought Ryan and I were partners, and we were all through the first season. I read early drafts of the scripts. I would give notes. He would change some things. It was working really well, I thought. Martin drew the lines in season 2, describing a process which he notes stopped landing. Yeah. I mean, I honestly have to agree with him here. Like, season 2, you felt it. You felt it. Whether through disagreement, inertia, or slow fade-out access, then we got into season 2, and he basically stopped listening to me. Martin said, explained that feedback either went nowhere or was met with vague assurances. Bitchy Pates even iced here when he describes being redirected away from Condal entirely. Martin Sagefield told him to submit notes to the network, which would then pass along combined notes to the showrunner, a corporate buffer that, in practice, reads like an author being asked to stop knocking directly on the writer's room door. From there, the reporting indicates the conflict escalated during a Zoom call with producers and HBO executives. Wow, where Condal presented his season 3 vision, Martin laid out objections, with sources claiming then with a blunt existential marker, this isn't my story anymore. Martin also made clear there are limits to what he'll say publicly about what followed. Ooh, man. When asked why he returned to involve being asked to step back, he claimed later, I can't talk about it. Damn. House Dragon had real issues behind the scenes after season 1 co-showrunner Miguel Sapochnik overtook some of the more epic episodes of Game of Thrones. I remember this, left the series. The show moved forward under Condal's stewardship. Man, fucking Miguel Sapochnik, he's the fucking secret sauce. Show moved for under Condal's stewardship, heading into season 2. The very stretch Martin now described as the point where the collaboration began to break down. Man, he bet on the wrong horse. He really did. That's what fucking happened. He bet on the wrong horse. Oh, lordy. With House of Dragon season 3 expected to hit later this year. Oh, is that really? Yeah. Chief Blois has said their plan is early summer 2026, return possibly June, just outside 2026. I mean, kind of quite the lands of Cold Splash. Audience right now on the show could be momentum. Yeah. For fans damaged and just the bad vibes, internet noise is trust. Yeah. Fuck. That's disappointing to hear. That doesn't make me excited for season 3.